Hi, my name is Donovan Dill. I'm a business consultant for the Small Business Startup. Since 1989, I've worked with small business to medium-sized companies to complete business planning, financial models, and everything regarding startup and growth. I am honored to be here at the Black Diamond Ball. Let's get started. Next slide, please. We are looking at Don's Meats. The owner, Don, has been in the community and is doing his business to support the community for many years within the GTA. He has not only sold meats, but food, spices to the community and the GTA. His business employs community workers and socially is involved in many events locally. By feeding those who need it most, Don was a pillar of the community. And as an entrepreneur, Don championed his community development in the St. Clair and Old Western Road area. Next slide, please. Our agenda today will quickly cover the following. How do you develop your business ideas? Steps to launch a small business model canvas versus business plan, registering your company, and effective pitch. Next slide, please. Startups. How do you develop your business idea? Well, a lot of times, the individuals that start up a company, whether it's a sole proprietorship or a group of people, they spend time in ideation. They spend time in understanding their products and get knowledge around what it is that they'd like to sell, or whatever service it may be, or whatever product it may be. And while you do that evaluation, you want to check on your strengths and understand how you can deliver those products and services or the resources that you have. And again, you got to go right back to brainstorming for your next steps.
Now, I'd like to take a look at the location and the importance of being close to your competitive market and your competitors. The important thing here is to come into the marketplace where you have customers. And the fact of it is, if you don't have customers in that market space, why are you entering that market without having a base? An understanding of how you're going to make your revenue all the way through. So let's take a look at this. When I have a linear equation or a linear street right here where we have customers on this side, 10,000, and 10K on this side, where would I enter the marketplace? Would I enter the marketplace closer to one or the other customer base, or would I enter the marketplace a little closer to the middle on either side to captivate one whole side, and maybe my competitors on the other side? I want to really focus on, if I'm first to enter the market, my marketplace is right here. It would be where I would want to enter in, is generally in the middle, right? In entering in the middle, I have both shares of the market. Without anybody else being there, I'm first to enter this marketplace. Now, if I'm second to enter the marketplace, what are my choices? Do I take over this area here? So this is the closer market of 10K, and hopefully the 10K on that side will stay with my competitor, or do I challenge my competitor? This is what that theory about McDonald's. McDonald's searches the landscape to find the optimal point of their marketplace. Then they sit within that optimal point, and then the next competitor could be, say, a Burger King. Burger King is right beside McDonald's. So if I was coming into the marketplace, number two would be this space right here, if I was Burger King. So when you are in your space and you're challenged to find out where to set up, look towards your competitor that created a market within that region or that space, and find a space close to them, so at least your clients would have the option to go from you over to them. Or if you're right beside them and they're overly busy, they might step into your space just so that they can get convenience. So customer service ranks over everything, and you can challenge your customer service directly by sticking right by your competitors. You'll find this also convenient with a lot of those hardware stores like the Lowe's and the Home Depots and the Canadian Tires. They somewhat are in the same vicinity in many urban areas. So keep that in mind.
Steps 2, you're launching your small business. So when you launch a small business, you have steps to launching a small business in mind. And it's all strategic thinking and brainstorming again, whereas you have to look at your brand and look at your customer segment and then understand where you're going to be. So in the products and services, what you do is you have to understand what products and what services and why. The marketing has to be dealt to a market where you have to understand how big the market might be or how big the market currently is within your area of expertise. Then the location is key. You, in many cases, have to find a marketplace and work with those customers in that marketplace. But a lot of people piggyback on the big giants that spend thousands and millions of dollars on investing in research, R&D, researching the client base and getting there. For example, when McDonald's opens up a location, they spend a lot of money on just finding the right location for their products and services, but they also buy the real estate. So this is a long-term investment. Thereby, a lot of smaller companies piggyback on McDonald's fame and then try to buy units close to them so that they can get trinkets of customers that fall off from McDonald's to walk in through their doors. Next.
Now, we're going to touch on branding. This is a very complicated thing that you really need to understand and work with a specialist on this, as well as think out what your products are and how you're going to enter the marketplace with your product. First, branding is yourself. How are you going to come across to everybody that you communicate with? How is your customer service going to represent you as you move forward? How are you going to sell your products and services based on who you are, what you represent, and where you're going to be within the marketplace? It's very important to be consistent. With branding, consistency is everything. Now, when you look at bigger brands like Pepsi, Coke, you can look at the color and the way they use the font to represent their brand. So follow along, the same thing. I sometimes see young entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs that don't have huge budgets experiment with many different colors, many different styles, it only further complicates your brand when you do that. Right off the bat, yes, there is a good go-between where you can put black on white or white on blue and reverse it. But the idea here is to stay consistent when you're building a brand, so at least you get an opportunity to get to the Nike status where it's as easy as a check mark after that. Before, Nike was spelt big in letters like this with the check mark. And after years of branding and millions of dollars, they get rid of this Nike and they just leave the check mark. Now, I know my check mark isn't perfect, but I try. So here with the brand, we're looking at colors. We're looking at colors. Yes, colors are important, right? The feel of the colors. So for example, when people think about McDonald's, they feel happy. I know my kids do. And often when they go by, they see the big arches and they see the yellow and the red. So why yellow and red? In McDonald's theory, a lot of it deals with the color palette and the passion, right? The red will symbolize something that stimulates hunger. And a lot of people don't realize it, but you pass the McDonald's, man, I could have a, something here. It's the smell, the flavor, the color. It is that all as a brand. Everything encompassing that is the brand. So therefore, when the kids gravitate to it, they also see a smile. They see the yellow smile. They see the golden arches. It brings out that happy feeling. When you see the emoji happy, it is bright yellow, and it's a big, like a Kool-Aid smile on that emoji. That's not by accident. So McDonald's has branded them to be happy, and you're hungry, so show up and enjoy a burger at McDonald's, right? If we went to this, the feel is very important. So when you brand your company and you do anything around your company, you want to get an idea of how it should feel. If you want to be a rugged company, or if you sell rugged products and services, then that's how it should be. But if you're more of a subtle company, like a company like Apple, they have a little chunk out of an apple, but it's not overbearing with color. It's never on its products. It almost seems like a shadow, but it layers class and a level of importance that they put to their brand, and that it simplifies everything. They want to be simple. They want the computer simple, and they want it to operate. So their brand represents that. So when we look at it, we look at color, feel, and then style. A lot of it is, if you are consistent with your style, then your brand will dictate how people view you. And once you have the right people in your target market viewing you the right way, and they're getting the right feel from your brand, they're going to buy from you. So once we go into that, we need to find that stickiness of style, color, feel, and we do that with font, right? So Steve Jobs didn't get his first run at Apple, right? People felt he was overbearing or what have you, and he, just didn't get a good run at Apple his first time around. But when he had come back to Apple and resurrected Apple, he had resurrected Apple with a simple thing of Apple font. People recognized in marketing how his fonts felt. And you can recognize that too when you deal with some of Apple fonts as opposed to the general PC font when you build any deck or anything. So he came back into Apple and actually understood the value of font, and that brought him through the front door again and resurrected Apple as a company in general. And then obviously it's innovation, Apple's next level, but he started innovating with font. So if we look at the brand story, the bigger picture are areas that help promote the company and the brand. Any brand, whether you have 3 stripes on a jacket symbolizing Adidas or a Nike check mark, always comes down to simplification over a process. But you don't want to spend $500 million trying to recognize or build your brand. You want to do it in an easy way, very simple, and not confuse people. So keep it simple, use the right colors, get the right feel about your company, get a certain style, and run with the font, and keep it simple.
The business model canvas or the business plan. Well, this debate went on for years and still goes on. When I went to the Global Summit of Entrepreneurship in Florida in 2015, this was a debate that Harvard had with other schools, and they were leaning towards the business model canvas. And a lot of other schools led towards the business plan because it was firm. Well, let's go through and do an analysis on this. Well, the business model canvas, of which you can pick up examples of that on canvanizer.com, is more agile, and it is easier to pivot from one idea to the next. It's a working tool, basically. And what you do with those working tools is test and try and come up with new ideas, test and try and come up with new ideas, and test and try until you get it right. And a lot of that testing and surveying is what's going to get you clients. So when you use that against the business model, against the business plan, it is often perceived as you already know what you're doing, right? Completing a business plan means that you've gone through some research, put some stuff together, and not only in your head, but have taken a segment of your population, of your target market, and solidified certain things with them by understanding and completing detailed plans and validating products and services that are backed by real stats. These product and targeted markets need to be proven revenue streams before you put them in a business plan. Now, a business plan document is quite a vast and big document with a lot of details, so you don't want to be rewriting your business plan 35 times before you present it to one investor or a bank. You want to make sure you use the agile model of the business model canvas to then test the grounds, and then when you've tested it, then you write into the business plan, and that's how I use those two documents. Thank you. Next slide, please. We're going to talk about registering your business. Well, I know something about that. As a student, I used to have a summer job working with the Ministry of Consumer and Commercial Relations back in the early 80s, or the mid 80s to late 80s, into the 90s, where I graduated from school and I still took on the job. It gave me the encouragement to open my own business, as a matter of fact, while I was working at CIBC as an assistant customer service manager. So this is an area that I've touched on, worked with for many a year. Next slide, please. When we deal with sole proprietorships, we're going to go right back on that. But when we deal with sole proprietorships, you are the business owner. There's no layoffs, no time off. You are your biggest champion. You're the CEO and cook and chief bottle washer. You're self-employed. That's what that means. And you can register these businesses and business names on many websites. But what I would recommend is that you go to Service Ontario and you look for small business startup, and you look for referred vendors from there to register your company. It's only $60 to $80. If you do a name search, it will be on the higher range. Next slide, please. For limited partnerships, there are multiple owners. There are often thousands and thousands of people that want to get in on limited partnerships if it's a big venture. But for mainly smaller ventures, you have to understand how you're going to break up, how you're going to dissolve the company in this manner. It's before you get into a limited partnership. Although it's a limited partnership, it means that you still have liability, but it's stated how much liability you have. You have the liability that you came in with from the onset. Often it is a set amount, and often there is a percentage of partnership that's deemed yours, of which you are responsible for that piece, and you're liable for that also if it was to go awry. Best thing to do is consult a lawyer at this level as well to see if you want to be provincially incorporated or provincially limited with your partnership, or you want to be federally under a limited partnership. So these are some of the ways that you could get started with your business, depending on how big your venture is and how much capital you need to raise. Next slide, please. Securing your business name or number in an incorporation is key. You have to understand you're going to be spending a lot of money incorporating your company. So incorporation is something that's much more serious after you've done a little testing ground on to seeing whether you have a marketplace or a really good idea that can go IPO or could be patent, right? So a lot of times individuals spend a lot of time milling about the business before they decide to pick out a business name, before they decide to invest fully in the incorporated name or business, right? So you can incorporate on a provincial level or federally if you'd like. This, again, you would need the consultation of a lawyer. Many professionals have corporations that they make based on health professionals like doctors and social workers, lawyers, accountants, and these professions will often have corporations to handle their holdings. The best situation here is to often consult lawyers at this level again, as we said. Next slide, please. Creating a pitch. This is where we're going next. There's so many ways to pitch and to do a pitch. There's so many styles of pitching. I usually teach this one. I was teaching it at Seneca many years, or in 2000, from 2017 up to 2021. And this is proven to be a successful way to teach, and I'd like to share that with you. So next slide, please. There is an effective way to pitch within this diagram. I've created this diagram to reflect a method that I was shown many years ago, but I've revised it to make people understand the diagram a little bit more. In this diagram, it shows you the following areas. And we basically look into start off the pitch with a buy-in section. So in this section, you want a buy-in statement. So it could be, have you ever, right? So it could be a question as well. It's not only just a general statement, but it could be a question to get buy-in. You need heads nodding at this point. So have you ever had this experience? Do you know anyone that had this experience? And as you nod during the pitch, others will nod too, and then you have their buy-in to go ahead. And as you build the problem, because often when you start pitching an idea, it's to solve a problem. You need a market to buy from you. Therefore, you need people to get on board and then put their dollars where their mouth is and buy your product. So you're building up the problem. So often you start off with, a very insignificant problem or a concern. It's a mild concern for you. And you state what that mild concern for and see if you have heads nodding. Then you go up to life-changing problems where, the situation of the product and services that you are providing needs to be addressed right away because it's changing the way people live their lives. But then the major problem is dropped at the top or towards the top, and somebody gets the magnitude of the problem when it is life-changing, life-altering, or, it's a situation that harms somebody significant, that is irreparable damage. So at this point, you are selling fear. In some pitches, people sell fear. In others, they sell just improvements. But really, in this case, what we're doing is we're magnifying the problem to make people understand where you are going with this. And then effectively, at the pinnacle of this, we're going to introduce your effective and your necessary solutions, right? Effectiveness of the solution is one thing that we want to highlight when you introduce your product. You want to say, my product handles the worst of the problem first, and then go down to the next level of the life-changing situation, and then address that with your product. And then the mild concerns could be addressed as well with your product on the decline inside of this pitch deck. Now, as you go into the solutions and answer these levels of problems that it caused that were out there in the market, you then resolve the problem and do a breakdown of the solution. By then, you are ready to introduce your team. And introducing your team is very important because it is the buy-in you need to make investors and people buy into your products and services, to make them understand that you are capable of running this business and you are capable of solving their problems. And after that, we go into your current achievements, your milestones, what you've done up to date to get you to this level, so that people buy in and want to invest in you or want to buy your products and services. From there, we hitch in a forecast on where you're going, how you will get their money back to them in many cases for investors. So if you're building a deck for investors and investment money and pitching, you want to include the year over year, maybe a 5-year plan of where you're going, or just a simple, the next 2 years, 3 years with your financials, and then give them an overall number for a 5-year vision. At this time, you would then pitch them to ask the investors or the buyers or the people that you're partnering with, how many shares do you want, for how much money, or for how much time, or for how much resources. Often people can pitch to build teams as well. So this is very important to understand.
Now we're going to deal with the pitch and the actual design of the pitch scheme. So in many cases, when you go into an office place, you're often nervous. So there is a way to get through this pitch nervousness by being prepared, by strategically walking through the steps that you need to convince somebody that there is a problem that you can solve. And by using these techniques, you can show that your team is available and ready to solve those problems. Now, when we focus on the beginning of this, as I said in my earlier diagram, that it's an effective pitch. So I'm going to give you an example of how to use this with a simple situation of too much plastics in the world, right? So have you ever is the statement that I'm going to use. So it's the buy-in statement. Have you ever gone outside and seen plastic bags hanging from trees, blowing around in construction sites, plastic bottles littered all over the floor in the forest at times when you're going out on nature walks? These are statements that will get the buy-in and the nods. Once you get the nods going, then you have some people ready to listen and take flight in your pitch. So with that said, we move on. Sometimes it's one word, or it's many words, or it's one statement, or it's two statements to get them prepared. But to get them on side, you have to get started with an exposition, or you're going to get some sort of buy-in here. So then we get to the problems. So problem number one, you don't need it to be like a hair on fire problem, like a lot of people that talk about pitching is. Not every single problem is a hair on fire, but you can show that you're building by actually telling them something simple that might affect everyone. So, I went out yesterday, I wanted to put out my recycling, and then I had to go pick up everybody else's recycled bottles that were blown over in a windy night. I felt that was like a little annoying. Right then and there, I thought maybe I should cut down on plastics. But a bigger problem than that. Hey, I was fishing the other day and all these fish started washing up to shore. And I thought, I can't eat the fish in the lake. And sure enough, the marine audience came up and the marine officers came up and they cut open the fish and you saw bits of plastic inside the fish. So I was definitely not eating that. Hey, let's get to a major problem up here. Now, if by a certain time, and you can put in stats in every single layer that you have in your pitch, that's good. Evidence-based stats are always good. So in many cases, they say by 2050, we'll have so many plastics in the ocean, it'll be more than the fish in the ocean. So, hey, if you really thought about that, and you're somebody that likes fish or even likes wildlife, would you rather see more plastics in the ocean or more fish or more wildlife? You're killing off our food source, and our entertainment with, the fish in the ocean. So when we look at that, what's your solution at this point? You intro your solution to the major problems that have happened. So at the worst part, they're killing off our fish, our food supply. I answer that problem with my solution. We are going to use less plastics. We're going to go back to using more paper-based cartons, containers without the plastic coats on them that could easily biodegrade. So we're going to go to a biodegradable solution. We're also going to use less plastic bags. We're going to go to a hemp bag, something that will dissolve in the earth after it's washed and used multiple times. You can now throw it out in your trash and it will dissolve because it's from hemp, made from hemp, and hemp will deteriorate and be eaten away. So that solution comes as step number 2 on a solution base to alleviate problem number 2. So as you go up with the problems, you come down with the solutions and you knock them off one at a time. And the careless thing, if I reduce my plastics, I don't have to pick up plastics on the road every day. I don't have to see them blowing around and hanging off trees. Well, that solution solved. Now let's move on. My team, yes, my team is capable. And you have to talk and understand that they have capabilities and introduce those capabilities. Well, I have a tech guy on board because everything is tech. And I need to get an online app. So we're going to create an online app with our UX designer and our back-end designer who can create this great application that will go in every household in the world. And they will use our application to source the right place and the right products, whether it's a hemp bag or a paper bag to use instead of plastic bags. Fine. So we would itemize what are our strengths for each of our team members so that they know we're the right team for the job. So that's what we do here. Then we get into our forecasting. People that invest money always want to know, how are you going to pay that money back to me? If I put in X amount of dollars, I need that back within a certain time to get a profit. And I still need stake in the company. After I've received all my money back, now I'm going to get investment back to me. So how do I do that? Well, I lay out a forecast that will state how the revenue streams will work and how my budget would work with the money I asked for. So if I ask for $1 million and I realize that I can earn $1 million or more in less than 3 years with the products I use, and I turn around with staff, that might be the right way to go about it. But if I can actually ask for $1 million that I can make 10 or 5 million within a short period of time with just that injection of that $1 million, then what happens is the investors are hungry to put in with a good forecast. Now, I'm not saying to lie, because a lot of these investors have been through the process already. So you have to get your facts aligned and make sure the amount of units that you can actually buy with the injection of cash that you can make are reasonable. And then the salaries that you put in your budget are reasonable as well, because they don't believe you can do it on your own. And if you were to hire somebody, would you run out of money before their investment starts coming back to them? That's the important thing. So you have to show that you will make the money within the span of time that's reasonable. And it's usually a 5-year to a 10-year period that you could pay back all the investors, and they will still have stake in the game. So the important thing is, at this point, to come out with your pitch. For this much cash, I will give you this many shares. And that is all about evaluating your company. So if, in fact, you can make in third year $3 or $4 million over third year, why are you asking for $100,000 for injection into your company? You need to ask for a good amount of money so that you can actually get started and run the company for the 2 years without any further injection. Because in the third and fourth and fifth year, these investors should be getting some of their money back. And by that time, they want to be able to double their money with their next flow of investment, or they want to start receiving some of their profits back and still hold shares in the company. So at this point, this is what you want to focus on. You want to focus on driving home how you're going to get their money back to them with a forecast, and making sure that you're asking for enough money to hold you over through thick or thin over this period of time, so that you can make sure their investment returns their percentage of money that they've given you.
So I want to thank you for this opportunity, for being with the RBC Black Diamond Ball and presenting on small business startup. Thank you for this opportunity to serve the community and this ball. We'll go into the questions and answers from here. Hi, everyone. We're into questions and answer session. So enter them in the chat if you'd like. I have a question from Fenella. Do you always need a lawyer to incorporate? That's a really good question, Fenella, and thank you for that question. You don't really need a lawyer to incorporate, but it is wise to do that, because at the point where you are thinking of incorporating, there's a lot of legal entities that come into play, and sometimes you might spend a whole lot of money on the front end of a lawsuit where you really don't need to, where a lawyer would have set out the documentations for incorporations much better than you would, and much tighter, so that you can ward off people that are looking to steal your name, your website, and any other documents that you might have. For instance, 1 year, many years ago, I had a group that was opening a business that was similar to somebody that was on Dragon's Den. And the Dragon's Den group, for whatever reason, won the money, and they had a similar name to the group that I was coaching. And they had asked them to book their name and cease and desist with all their legal documents, their website, their phone number, their anything that they've promoted. And they spent years promoting it because they had the name before the company B from Dragon's Den. Although they had the name, they didn't incorporate the name. Company B took the money and swiftly incorporated it, and then put out a cease and desist to the company I was coaching. and then had that in court in Calgary. So now they had to take a flight from Toronto to Calgary and defend everything in court, which made absolutely no sense when they could just give up the name and then incorporate a newer name. So what they did was they incorporated a name that was much more catchy, easier to put in a URL, and they actually did very good with that company and were very successful with that without having to deal with a lawsuit. I have Shane D. How do you attach two incorporations into one incorporation? Well, these are things, again, that you would sit down with a lawyer with to try to get a blanket company to either dissolve the one or two that you have and open up a new company, or use an umbrella company to have both of those smaller companies in the bigger umbrella company, where you might have a distribution arm of a company and a product arm of a company, and you want to keep them separate. That might be a way to go. But getting a lawyer to do that paperwork is key, again, because the lawyer will know the words to bind the agreement properly, whereas you as an individual might not know those words. And in the court of law, you might have a loophole that could put you in a difficult situation. So that's hence a lawyer is probably a better person to consult on that. Thank you. Naki, oh, hi Naki, how are you? Okay, what tools have you come across to help business owners with automatic activities like scheduling? Wow, the tools. To be quite honest, the tools that are on right now, I don't use a lot of those tools. I am very old school with spreadsheets, and then even just as we're looking at what we schedule, it simply book me, doodle poll, and other things like the Outlook feature that I usually use on a regular basis. But if you have some, I would love to have them come through and we can scrape them in the chat. And thanks so much, Naki, for attending and giving us that. Okay, so we have a question coming in. How do you make sure you do not overvalue your business? And this is from Lamar Ferguson. So Lamar, you don't have a chance to overvalue your business. Just to give you a heads up, many people that do business evaluations focus on what you actually sell and what you've actually put into your business. So a lot of times when you're evaluating your business, you're evaluating potential that hasn't come through yet. So it's often that you assess the projections on how you're going to run the company, and that builds evaluation, right? It's as simple as if a VC or an investor does want to come to you, they will do their homework and understand what's the marketplace is like, and then they'll set that as a standard. And then within that standard, do you have the runway of capital, resources, and the right people to get into that market right away to capture a percentage of that market and sell to that market? So in some cases, some entrepreneurs that have products could sort of do it a little simply by showing your product line and how many units that you have in your product line. Say, for instance, you have like 1,000 units in your product line, and every unit is 10,000 or $10 a unit. So you have $10,000 worth of income that you have to turn over within a certain period of time. So when companies see that you're cash strapped, they can make evaluation on your company based on whether you have the resources to put into the company, or you can actually sell the units that you say you're going to sell. So they can make that evaluation over themselves. You, in many terms, can put an evaluation out there, just like our team that we brought to Dragon's Den. We spend around 6 hours going through each price model of what the units that they could sell, and to how many different types of customers, broke it down into a percentage of the marketplace, and then said how they were going to service that marketplace within a period of time. So you sort of get an extrapolation of a number that then becomes more real, but it's still not real, because when we went to Dragon's Den, the Dragons still asked the person, well, why don't you come back when we find out your first year of sales, or in a year and a half when you have sales, right? So a lot of people that like try to do valuation on companies are more cognizant of like, how much have you sold so far? You hear that on Shark Tank, you hear it on Dragon's Den. They want to know how quick your sales are increasing, and if they're on a trajectory of more of like a hockey stick shape, so like going up and then a sharp curve. They want to see when you hit the bottom of that sharp curve, they want to ride that. So you find a lot of investors want to get to you just when you're picking up on your sales, and they know you have a viable market. Thank you for that question, Lamar. And Shane D again, what are the greatest sites to build a professional deck? Okay, well, I'll be honest with you, Shane. There's no site that I use directly. You build a professional deck with let's just cite some of them. So Canva, you can build good decks with. PowerPoints, you can build good decks with. And other Prezi, you can build good decks with, right? But any deck that you build, it's not aesthetic stuff that you have to look for. It's the material, it's what's in the deck, right? So as you're building a good deck, you need to have solid material. If you don't have solid material, the deck is like a deck of cards. It just collapses, right? So what you want to do is make sure you have good research, and with those research, you're able to quote them and put numbers in the deck that will enable people to believe and understand what you are trying to sell them or trying to pitch them. So that's the key. Often when I go and pitch competitions and I judge them, you find things that gap. And one of the biggest things that gap is that people think you're asking for $100,000, right? And you're hiring 4 people. At $14 an hour, 4 people at 100,000 would just eat up the salary alone, right? So, and then you wouldn't have the resources to make your product or do your service in many cases. So these are the things that gap. And if you're able to statistically put a number out there, you have to back it with facts, like per unit, I'm selling this much to get this number of dollars into back to my investors by this time, because I would have had the runway or the amount of time to have completed these sales and produced these products by this time. And often people don't keep those in consideration. So the inconsistencies is what judges look for, and also investors look for. And that's why you see a lot of times the Dragons or Shark Tank, they'll have their pad there and they'll listen to how much revenue somebody made, and then they'll ask how many units did you sell, and then they'll ask what was the price of the unit. So if somebody is, you know, telling a story, those dragons can figure that out with those 3 units, and they say, oh, this person lying to us, right? And then go from there. So thank you for that question. Okay. Thank you for the questions, everyone. Really appreciate this opportunity. And we're looking for the giveaway. It's giveaway time, and we are looking to give away something. And the question is, for the giveaway, basically tell us who was featured, what business was featured in the, what small business was featured in this presentation early on. So give us the name of the small business that was featured as a pillar of the community earlier on in the presentation. I hope you guys have a wonderful night, and I don't see any answers coming up for the pillars, but maybe you are putting them in the chat. So at the beginning of the presentation, there was an individual that fed the community, that owned a store or business. What was the name of that? Oh, there you go. I see. And I want to say Nadisi Philip Lee, and maybe Nadikas Philip Lee. Don's Meats is the answer. Sorry if I butchered your name there. I am so bad with names. Oh, I see a lot of people are coming up with Don's Meats. Congratulations. Black Diamond Ball. All right. So congratulations to Nadikai, and for the Black Diamond Ball, you've just won something. If you can email it at info@artx and PERIENTIAL.com, you'll claim your prize at that part. That's info@artexperiential.com. You can claim your prize. All right. Thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful evening.